while attached to southern naval area in this study with the aim of analyzing the traffic volume, identifying the traffic type, and surveying the destination. The methodology adapted for the analysis by gathering of ships data using the automatic identification system by visual confirmation and where necessary by establishing radio communication with the relevant ship. It was evident that the traffic volume averaged 60 to 100 merchant vessels per day in sea lane of communication with 60% being cargo ships. The cargo ships are encompassing the container vessels of both categories, the feeders and the mainliners. Feeders are the vessels that connect regional ports by bringing import-export cargo to and from hub ports. The mainliners are the vessels that connect hub ports. Generally, the mainliners are capable of carrying more than 3,000 of containers or 20-foot equivalent units to be more precise, while the feeders of below the carrying capacity of 3,000 TEU. The ships are getting bigger to bring the unit cost down, and world is witnessing ultra-large container carriers of more than 15,000 TEU and new Panamax of around 12,000 TEU. These ships need deep waters of 16 meters and above, and our waters, ladies and gentlemen, are perfectly suited as we have the depth and our tidal variation are less than 3 feet or 1 meter at anywhere in the island. Out of the total volume on westbound passage, it was observed that only 22% call on at Port of Colombo. As these 60% of cargo vessels provide opportunities for potential services through our ports, a competitive and efficient service sector could well dominate the region. Out of the total volume of traffic, 40% observed to be tankers, and this need our attention. While some tankers ferrying refined petroleum products uses the traffic separation scheme at Dondra, the heavy tankers observed to be taken a route well south of the traffic separation scheme. They are mainly bulk tankers, and all westbound vessels are observed to be running on ballast, while all eastbound detected to be fully laden. The matter of concern in these passages is that both present potential dangers of pollution. The vessels fully laden in an event of collision or accident would spill oil in the EEZ belongs to us, and the vessels run on ballast carry the risk of introducing invasive species in an event of deballasting within our EEZ. Next to sea lane of communication, the designated search and rescue region become priority as our obligations in international arena make us a regional force to reckon with. The 1979 International Convention on Search and Rescue, adopted in April 79 and came into force in June 1985, have allocated a maritime space to the government of Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka Navy is the designated agency in executing the marine rescue coordination in the area. As superpower navies reduce their presence in vast ocean spaces due to financial cutdowns, considerable vacuum has created in international waters, paving way for many illegal activities in these unpatrolled open spaces. Sri Lankan Navy's experience in hunting down the terrorist floating warehouses in international waters far away from home jurisdiction is an indication of how serious the matter has become. Hence, policing the sea area under coastal state jurisdiction, in this case a maritime space of 27 times the landmass, become of paramount importance. The search and rescue region is not merely an ocean space. Its responsibilities and obligations have political interest too. Let me remind you that in early 1990s, there had been a political undercurrent to take control of the designated search and rescue region away from us, claiming Sri Lanka's inability to fulfill the international obligations. So far, I have deliberately stayed away from mentioning the potentials in exploiting the marine resources, both living and non-living, within the tensional maritime space for the economic development of the island nation. As I analyze, nothing supersedes the strategic geopolitical factors in our maritime space, and all resources render useless unless until we secure the maritime interest from geopolitics. No oceanographic excursion, expedition, and data stand alone as pure scientific today, but at the same time, ocean space is seamless. In the sense, the flow of water does not confine us to stand alone either. In today's marine science, we need to be collaborative. We need to be open-minded in oceanographic studies, as what we know about our maritime space is mere trickle of knowledge. Because the oceans behave differently, and it is a dynamic environment. We need to know the dynamic to forecast. We need to know the real-time data to model scenarios to predict. And most importantly, we need resource personnel to go out to sea and do all these observations. Marine research, ladies and gentlemen, are costly affairs. And that is why there's a saying, measure once, use all, meaning whoever goes out to sea to collect observations, samples, and data, and that could be used by others for analytical purposes. What I'm flashing on screen are some of the marine resources. We know that it's there, but many more studies need to be determined, the most economical means to exploit them. The potential for hydrocarbon and petroleum resources are high on the eastern seas, but technology is still to be developed to extract them. Therefore, we are obliged to preserve them for future generations. The opportunities for development of wind and wave energy are high on the southeastern coastline, yet capital investment is still too far for us to bear. The sea surface temperature in our southwestern seaboard and the northeastern seaboard determine the amount of water vapor the wind will carry in bringing rainfall for our agriculture-based economy. And surface temperature differed even by 1 degree, affect the amount of moisture in the wind. We know the pattern, but what we do not know is the change in dynamics and the effect they bring on our climate. At the beginning, nations were interested in knowing the surface and underwater currents, their temperature, their salinity, because of the naval application in these parameters in underwater warfare. But today, same will demonstrate how the nutrient and plankton move around and concentrate, to which the fish stocks gather around. And when the small fish stocks gather, bigger fish will invariably loiter around. These are real-time happening. We are simply observing certain parameters such as ocean color, currents, and temperature. The fisher folks are directed for better catches at better efficiency. As you would see, this is just the tip of the iceberg. During the delivery of my paper, I refrained from covering all sorts of spheres that involve with studies to the oceans. For example, in 2009, motor tanker Granba, a Turkish registered vessel carrying 2,500 metric tons of pure sulfuric acid, sank off Trincomalee. Within the ESET belongs to us. We didn't have lawyers specialized in the field to pursue the legal proceeding, but trained the available lawyers of Marine Environmental Pollution Preventive Authority to learn from the incident to handle the situation in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the point I would like to emphasize here is that the avenues to which we need resource personnel are many, and in which each avenue we must have qualified personnel. In the absence of these resource personnel, we as a nation is liable to succumb to the competitiveness. In concluding my paper, dear audience, I hope you understand the immense potentials the ocean around us offer and the need of strategic vision in achieving desired objectives. The necessity of resource personnel at different layers of the profession, graduates to technicians, operators to analysts, visionary planners to officials, all form pieces of the wider network to achieve desired objectives. Finally, I'll be failing in my duty if I do not extend my heartiest gratitude to the Vice Chancellor and the organizing committee of this symposium for granting me an opportunity to deliver this paper. Thank you very much.